Yeah, and that's the concern. There are more religious and ethnic minorities there, essentially waiting to see what happens to them. Our Anna Corin is in Erbil. Back with us, CNN military analyst, retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. Thank you so much for joining us both. Anna, let's start with you. We know that U.S. warplanes carried out 3 new airstrikes near Erbil. Give us the latest of what you're seeing there and hearing and experiencing on the ground.
Well, certainly up here in northern Iraq, those airstrikes are continuing and making a significant difference on the battlefield. It's forcing the ISIS militants to change their tactics, but certainly down in Amelie, that township that you are talking about, we've just got word that there are Iraqi military reinforcements coming to the aid of those local police, the volunteers within that township who have taken up arms to try and fight off those militants who, mind you, are at the gates of this township. They've cut off water, they've cut off power. We're hearing reports from, say, the Turkmen Foundation, who has family, friends within the area, that dozens of children have died as a result of starvation, of dehydration. I mean, the situation is dire. So that call went out from the UN a few days ago, talking about a possible massacre. The Iraqi Prime Minister designate also appealing for help for those US airstrikes, perhaps to be expanded to cater for Amelie, but that has not happened as yet.
So that's interesting, considering a new round of humanitarian airstrikes in Iraq. At the same time, they're weighing their options in Syria. I want to bring in General Mark Hertling here. General, the president will meet at the White House today with his national security team. He meets in the afternoon. There's been a fair amount of talking. Now, supporters of the president say this shows that he's trying to come up with a measured response and be patient to come up with the right answer. His critics will say, you know, it's too little, too late, and it is time for action. From a military standpoint, how much time do you have? Because clearly ISIS knows the U.S. is considering airstrikes now in Syria.
Well, it is an ongoing operation, John, and it's a great question. I think Anna's report on Amerli, the nearby towns of Tuz-Kamato, remember the early mission that the president gave was to prevent humanitarian crises. There are several other groups like the Yazidis. We talked about them for a long time. Now we have the Turkmen. There's also the Chaldeans, the Assyrians, and many, many more. Amerli is a hotbed of Turkmen population. I've been to that town before. It's unlike the Yazidi crisis because there's no mountain to climb up to get away from the ISIS fighters. So there is going to be a requirement to continue to support the Iraqi military, the Peshmerga, as they try and relieve this humanitarian crisis in this very relatively small town.
And we've talked about it, but I think it bears repeating. We talk about the fact that there are these jihadis from other countries joining the ISIS forces. I want you to tell me what you think that the future looks like and how that complicates things if there were to be boots on the ground.
Well, from the standpoint of ISIS and recruiting, it's a sexy appeal to jihadists all over the world. Come here to fight. They love doing that. But I think as this fight continues, what you're going to see is a continued turn away from this radical extremist group. Remember, I remind that there's 11 million people in northern Iraq, from Baghdad up to the Syrian-Turkish border. 11 million people. Not all of them. In fact, the great majority of them run counter to what ISIS is going to do. I personally think this group is going to wear themselves out. There's going to be action against them as the Iraqi government gets their act together, and it seems like they're doing that now. The Peshmerga are getting new energy, and they're continuing this fight. So I think you're going to see a lot of jihadis going there, and a lot of jihadis eventually being killed.
Why such confidence, General?
I'm sorry?
Why such confidence in that? It's interesting that you say that. You think that they're going to kind of run out of steam. What makes you believe that?
My confidence is based on my experience with the people in northern Iraq. These are good people. I mean, they want freedom, they want peace, they want to get their kids to schools, they want to have their businesses thriving, and the ISIS attack is disrupting all that. You're seeing probably a lot of Ba'athist coming in as well. The military approach, they're getting some of that from from the former Baathists. It's a different organization, but I think the good people of northern Iraq are going to have a similar event like the awakening, like we saw in 2006 and 7 and 8, and they're going to begin to push these people back because they are so radical. It's going to take a long time. This is not going to happen very fast.
Before that happens, there is more chaos, and I want to leave you with the last note here, because we are getting reports this morning that there are these battles raging in some of the oil fields near Mosul. Do you have an update on how that's going right now?
Yeah, we spoke to officials, John, and they say that operation is still underway to try and push those ISIS militants out of this area. Remember, they took Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, back in June, and much of the surrounding area. Then earlier this month, they took Mosul Dam. Obviously, the Peshmerga managed to retake control of it last week, but it's those surrounding villages and towns that still are under ISIS control. The Peshmerga certainly moving through, pushing them out. In their wake, as they leave, ISIS is setting these oil wells alight. They're blowing up pipelines, creating huge plumes of black smoke. They're also leaving IEDs and landmines. So we also understand that there have been many Peshmerga injuries up in that operation today as well, John.
All right, key decisions to make about U.S. operations in Iraq, possible operations in Syria. Anna Coren, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, great to have you both with us. Appreciate it. There's other news to tell you about.